Former South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol was back in a solitary jail cell on Thursday.
She's now behind bars in a Seoul detention center.
Shifting focus, former South Korean President Lee Myung-bak has been sentenced to 17 years in prison for corruption, bribery, and embezzlement.
Did you know that almost every modern president in South Korea has been impeached, imprisoned, or simply investigated? And we're not talking about autocrats or dictatorships, we're talking about democratically elected leaders. People who rose through power through the will of the people and ended their terms in disgrace, courtrooms, or even worse. From secret funds to bribery scandals, mass protests to prison cells, the South Korean presidency has been known for something truly unusual, a seemingly built-in downfall. And now once again the cycle continues in 2025, once considered one of the cleanest leaders in modern Korean history was indicted. This is a story of South Korea's cursed presidency, a story about power, justice, public anger, and the dangerous pressure at the top of one of Asia's most dynamic democracies. To really understand this, we need to examine not only the individuals in power, but also the structural forces that shape them. Political systems, cultural expectations, legal institutions, and public demands all converge on one office, the presidency. And in South Korea, that office seems to come with hidden trapdoors. Let's first talk about the money. In South Korea, business and politics are deeply interwoven, especially when it comes to the chaebols. Chaebols are giant family-run companies like Samsung, Hyundai, and SK. They dominate the economy and hold tremendous sway over national policy. These corporate empires were instrumental in Korea's post-war economic miracle, but they also became interwoven with politics in a way that often blurred the line between collaboration and corruption. And presidents often rely on chaebols for campaign support through direct donations, corporate lobbying, and informal funds. In return, governments tend to offer favorable regulations, tax breaks, pardons, and protection from competition. And even well-meaning presidents can't escape this dynamic. And the economic is so dominated by a few corporate players that true political independence is difficult. And chaebols often act as kingmakers and deal makers. And the problem? These arrangements are rarely transparent. Money flows quietly, influence is bartered behind closed doors, and once a president is out of power, these deals are dragged into the open. It's a cycle, and the presidency enables access to wealth. That access invites abuse, and the abuse invites investigation. And it's not always about greed. Sometimes it's about loyalty, family, or simply survival in a hyper-competitive political system. But the outcome is almost always the same.
History was made with calm deliberation. 299 of its 300 members casting a vote on the impeachment of their president. The result, conclusive.
The spotlight turns on the money trail, and the trail leads back to the president. One of South Korea's greatest strengths is its democratic energy. It's a country where citizens do not sit back and wait. They march, they protest, they organize, and they hold candles in the cold and demand justice. In 2016 and 2017, over 2 million Koreans flooded Seoul in a peaceful sea of candlelight, calling for impeachment of Park Geun-hye, and it was considered one of the most powerful civic movements in modern Asian history. And it worked. The president was removed, the court upheld the ruling, and the country remained stable. And South Korea proves that democracy doesn't just live in voting booths, it lives in the streets. But there's a flip side to this passion. It creates immense pressure, and presidents are not merely judged by the legal standard, they're judged by emotional ones, like public sentiment as well as symbolic expectations. And when things go wrong, the punishment can feel like exile. Beyond that, South Korea's political system is deeply polarized. Conservative and progressive parties alternate in power, often with little cooperation or continuality. And every new government comes in with a mission to dismantle the legacy of the last one. And sometimes that mission even includes legal prosecution. And justice or vengeance, the line is pretty blurred. Prosecutors are powerful, investigations are sprawling, and in the courtroom of public opinion, the verdict often comes before the trial. This isn't to say that charges are always false. Many presidents did commit crimes, but the pattern of each administration targeting its predecessor erodes trust. It turns justice into spectacle, and it makes political survival feel temporary. And if you like the video so far, make sure to drop a like as well as a follow below. I make videos like this all the time, and if you like shorter videos, make sure to check out my Instagram as well as TikTok. And in a system where accountability feels like punishment and power feels like a trap, there's no wonder the presidency has become a burden. And no case captures the emotional gravity of South Korea's presidential downfall cycle quite like that of Roh Moo-hyun. Elected in 2003, he came from a humble beginning. He was born in poverty, worked as a labor's rights lawyer, and rose to political power by challenging the establishment. and he ran on a message of reform, transparency, as well as fairness. And to many, he represented something new, an outsider who defied Korea's political system. But to be fair, his presidency was also rocky. He struggled with a divided National Assembly as well as constant opposition. His reform agendas met fierce resistance, yet even critics acknowledged his sincerity. After leaving office in 2008, he returned to his quiet hometown, but soon after, allegations emerged. Prosecutors accused his family, in particular his older brother as well as his wife, of receiving bribes from wealthy businessmen. Although he denied direct involvement, the investigation gained momentum. Every day, new headline, new accusations, and new questions. And the pressure was relentless, and the dignity of what he worked so hard to preserve was now eroding. And on May 23, 2009, he climbed the hills behind his hometown and threw himself off a cliff. And he also left a note: "Too many people are suffering because of me. I can't even read books, I can't sleep, don't be too sad. Life and death are all part of nature. Don't be sorry, don't blame anyone, it's simply fate." And his suicide decimated the country. Millions mourned, spontaneous vigils erupted across the nation, and his death drew crowds of grieving citizens holding yellow ribbons, the color of his campaign. And his death didn't just expose the presidency, it exposed the unbearable emotional toll of public life in Korea, the shame culture, the media frenzy, and the prosecutorial pressure. In many ways, his passing became a cautionary tale of how easily a nation's hope can become its heartbreak. And if his fall was defined by a quiet tragedy, Park Geun-hye's was marked by a spectacular collapse. Park was South Korea's first female president and the daughter of the authoritarian leader who ruled Korea from 1961 until his assassination in 1979. Her political identity was tied to legacy, discipline, and conservative values. Elected in 2012, she was seen by supporters as a stable force, a familiar name, and a return to order. But behind the scenes, something strange was unfolding. Park's long-term friend had no official government role, but was reportedly influencing everything from policy speeches to emotional appointments. And even more alarming, he was extorting money from major corporations like Samsung as well as others, under the guise of non-profit foundations. In late 2016, the public found out, and the response was electric. Every Saturday, crowds swelled in downtown Seoul, from students to grandparents, from rural farmers to office workers. Millions came with candles, chanting, singing, and demanding a resignation. It was peaceful, massive, and impossible to ignore. On December 9, 2016, the National Assembly voted to impeach Park. 3 months later, the Constitutional Court upheld the impeachment. She was removed from office, becoming the first Korean president to be legally ousted. Park was later convicted of bribery, coercion, abuse of power, and much more. Her initial sentence was 24 years, extended to 32, and then reduced again to 22. In 2021, she was pardoned for health reasons. Park's presidency began as a tribute to legacy. It ended as a symbol of secrecy, manipulation, and elite entitlement. But the deeper story is what her downfall represented. Even the most powerful figures in the land could be held accountable by the people. And following her scandal, the country turned to someone they believed could bring healing. Jae-in had served as chief of staff previously. He was a former human rights lawyer, a soft-spoken figure who emphasized transparency, fairness, as well as peace. Elected in 2017, his rise felt like a course correction. Moon led major diplomatic efforts with North Korea, managing historical summits between Kim Jong-un and world leaders. And his government was praised for its handling of COVID-19 pandemic in its early stages. And he also boosted welfare spending and made real attempts to rein in prosecutorial power. But Moon's term wasn't free of controversy either. Housing prices soared, economic inequality persisted, and the near end of his term, questions emerged about his favoritism in appointments. And in 2025, under a conservative successor, Moon Jae-in was indicted. The charge? That he helped secure a senior government appointment for someone who had hired his son-in-law. Supporters called it petty, baseless, and politically motivated. Opponents claimed that it was proof that even clean images hide dirty deals. Moon's case is still unfolding, but it fits the pattern. A presidency of promise, an exit of suspicion, and once again the cycle continues. And keep in mind that South Korea isn't the only country where leaders fall, but the frequency as well as predictability are nearly unmatched. But in most other democracies, these are outliers. In Korea, the opposite is true. It's more surprising when a president doesn't face legal trouble. Why? Because no other democracy has a combination of a single-term presidency with huge power, a fiercely independent and political prosecution service, a media culture that thrives on scandals, a deeply polarized party system, and a civic culture deeply rooted in mass mobilization. Together, these ingredients make downfalls not just possible, but almost guaranteed. So if the presidency is cursed, can the curse be lifted? And experts have suggested several reforms. 1. Change the term limits. Allow 2 4-year terms, giving presidents time to govern while remaining accountable to voters. 2. Make the prosecutors less vulnerable to political pressure by insulating appointments and investigations. 3. Strengthen legislative checks. Reduce overreaching by creating stronger institutional balances. 4. Encourage political continuity. Foster policy consensus and reduce the practice of dismantling everything the previous administration did. And 5. Promote post-presidential dignity. Create roles for ex-presidents in civic life to reduce the perception of them as threats or scapegoats. And these things are really important, because if this cycle doesn't change, the country will continue to eat its own leadership, and no matter how good a president starts out, the finish line may always end in handcuffs. The South Korean presidency is one of the most powerful elected offices in the democratic world. Yet it often feels like a gilded cage, one where no matter how noble the intention, the result is scandal, shame, or imprisonment. But perhaps this isn't uniquely a Korean story, and perhaps it mirrors something deeper: how modern democracies are struggling to balance power and accountability, how transparency collides with polarization, and how public trust is built slowly but destroyed quickly. And South Korea is a remarkable country. Its journey from military dictatorship to thriving democracy in just a few decades is nothing short of extraordinary. Its people are politically engaged, civically inclined, as well as deeply invested in justice. But the office of the president remains a puzzle, still not fully adapted to the country's democratic maturity, and each administration seems to be walking on tightrope, between leadership and overreaching, between idealism and real politics, and between hope as well as humiliation. And it's really easy to take a look at the headlines: another president indicted, as well as another corruption probe. But what if the real takeaway is this: that South Korea's democracy is working, that the presidents aren't immune, that no one is above scrutiny, and that the same mechanisms that bring them down also keep the power in check. And yes, it's messy, yes, it's painful, but maybe it's part of growing up as a democracy. Still, the question lingers: can South Korea break the cycle? Not by shielding the president from accountability, but by designing a system that prevents them from needing to be taken down in the first place. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoy it. And for more videos like this, make sure to follow as well as subscribe. I will continue to make topics like this, so I hope you guys enjoy it, and I have a couple new videos coming, so stay tuned. Anyways, thank you so much, and take care.
This morning, South Korea's president is facing calls to resign or be impeached after a rare, turbulent 24 hours. In Seoul, people spilled into the streets, their chants drowned out by helicopters overhead as the country grappled with a short-lived declaration of martial law imposed by democratically elected but deeply unpopular President Yoon Suk-yeol.